Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My warmest welcome to everyone joining the APACT conference today. I'm Bang-on Ritipakdi, the Director of the Global Center for Good Governance in Tobacco Control, or GGTC. I will be the host for this plenary. I believe we are well aware that tobacco costs lives, causes economic loss, contribute to environment degradation, and pose significant threat to sustainable development. The WHO FCTC embodies a comprehensive set of measures to prevent and reduce tobacco consumption, many of which are not only within the health arena, but are also in the non-health sectors. The Plenary Tobacco Control Without Walls aim to impart key considerations and lessons on the integrations of tobacco control beyond the health sectors and into the development agenda. I'm pleased to have with us high-level experts who will be discussing opportunities and way forward to inspire collaborative partnership between the non-health and health sector towards achieving common goals in reduced tobacco use. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our guest speakers, Senator Pia Cayetano from the Republic of Philippines. She is leading voice for public health and tobacco control in the Philippines. She is the former chairperson of the Senate Committee on Health and Demography when she works for the passage of two landmark measures. The first one, passes in 2012, is the Act restructuring the excise tax on alcohol and tobacco. This law raised funds for universal health care by increasing tax on so-called sin products. The other is an act to effectively instill health consciousness through graphic health warning on tobacco products in 2014. Due to her tight schedule at the Congress this week, she will deliver her keynote address through video presentations. May I have video on, please? Thank you.
Hello and warm greetings from the Philippines. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to share my experiences as a Member of Parliament and as a long-term advocate of tobacco control in the Philippines and in the world. Tobacco control is critical to the health of the Filipinos. 23.8% of Filipinos in the age group of 15 and above use tobacco products, and over 100,000 Filipinos die in tobacco-related diseases every year. One of the most effective ways in championing tobacco control is through legislative measures, but also using a whole-of-society approach. And I'd like to walk you through our history to demonstrate this. Currently in the Philippines, we have 4 key legislations on tobacco control. The earliest legislation we had is the Tobacco Regulation Act of 2003. I wasn't a senator there, but it basically was the first legislation that prohibited the sale and purchase of cigarettes and regulated the advertisements and marketing of these products. 5 years later, in 2008, I was a new senator, and we worked on the strengthening of tobacco regulation by pushing for picture-based health warnings. This took almost 6 years to pass. So in 2014, it was signed into law. Meanwhile, in 2012, I was very much involved in the Sin Tax Reform Act, which basically increased the tax on a lot of sin products, alcohol and tobacco. And aside from increasing the price of tobacco, the net effect was the increase in the price. We also put the revenues collected towards helping the public health sector. So it went to universal health care, medical assistance, and for health facilities. Meanwhile, some 10 years or so later, specifically last year, I became the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means, and this time handled the latest sin tax reform measures. And we increased the taxes for alcohol, heated tobacco products, and vapor products. So these are the e-cigarettes, the heated tobacco products and the like. And this is also highly contested, but the net result was very good. Not only did we provide taxation on these products, I would have wanted it to be higher, but as you know, there's a lobby, and we did not end up with the highest amount that I would have wanted to tax. But key wins here were we were able to put these products, heated tobacco and vapes, under the jurisdiction of the Food and Drug Authority. We were also able to say that the minimum age of purchase would be 21 years old, and we limited the flavors to plain tobacco and menthol. Now, the problem we have now is barely a year has passed since we passed that sin tax measure, and there is already a movement. The House has passed a measure, and the Senate is now considering a measure that will reverse these very gains that we made. It's terrible, I know. I'm working very hard to increase awareness on this, and I do hope it doesn't pass the Senate, but it's not totally within my control. So there, and what I wanted to add here is that I also approach these issues from the perspective of the other committee that I chair, which is the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking. So clearly Sdg 3, which calls for good health and well-being, is very much affected, and I always include this in the discussions. I want young people to be aware of this, students, obviously the academe, to understand that this goes into the bigger picture of health and wellness. And futures thinking provides us with a mechanism to study all possible futures. And clearly, one of those possible futures is a situation where we have compromised health of our young people who may potentially be switching to vaping and e-cigs, which has its own health issues. So we want the public to be very much aware of that. What are our recommendations? Well, we're sticking to the whole of government, whole of society approach. The private sector, in particular the civil society, has been extremely supportive and have taken the initiatives to help us as legislators, the doctors, of course, health professionals, and even young people. But we all face the same tobacco lobby, and so I do call on more support every single day, because we are fighting this issue that never dies. It may be a variation of the product, a variation of their approach, but this is an issue, a fight that we have to keep up with. So on that note, my role is to continue with legislation that will block measures that subtly or not so subtly actually reverse the gains that we've made, but also to continue to work on new measures that may strengthen tobacco control. So I hope that was helpful to you, and if there's anything we can do, if our work can be of help to any of you, feel free to reach out. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a good day.
Thank you for the very thought-provoking message, Senator Cayetano. You clearly demonstrate that the whole of government's approach is critical to successfully enhance tobacco control measures, and the parliamentarians and are strategic champions in moving the tobacco control agenda forward. Our next speaker is Dr. Suprida Arinyanon. He is the CEO of Thai Health Promotion Foundation, or Thai Health. He works proactively, he and his team work proactively with over 20,000 partner organizations. It is a multi-sectoral partners that Thai Health working with. He is one of the leading experts in innovative health financing and health promotions. He will talk about challenge and solutions in integrating tobacco control into the whole government and society. Dr. Suprida, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Bangon, for the kind introduction. And warm greeting to distinguished speakers and all participants. As Honorable Senator Kia just addressed, how critical it is to move tobacco control beyond the wall. So in the next 7 minutes, I would like to share with you the challenges and solutions to overcome the walls of the government and the wall between various sectors in the society. Slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. For this presentation, I will start with the why. Why do we need whole of government and whole of society integration? Then I will introduce key challenges in doing so. And finally, I will suggest some solutions based on the lesson learned from Thailand. Next slide, please. The reason why we need whole of government and whole of society integration is simply because tobacco control is a team effort by nature, as stated by one of the lifelong tobacco control champion, Mr. Michael Bloomberg. This is evidently clear when we look at the Empower strategies. All these 6 interventions need action and cooperation beyond any line ministry and beyond the health sector. Next slide, please. Now, let's look at the key challenges in the working together as a government or a society. At first challenge, there are always competing priorities in the government, which oftentimes resulting in the lack of the support for tobacco control. Secondly, we usually suffer from the silo effect or the ineffective coordination among different organizational or governmental units, as well as across sector, particularly health and non-health sector. Thirdly, the society is, in some extent, still lack of awareness of tobacco harms and how to actively participate and contribute to the tobacco control. And lastly, is due to the tobacco industry subversive influences to interfere in the policy process and to misguide the public. Next slide, please. In Thai context, I would like to share about the innovative and sustainable funding model of Thai health, which has given Thailand an effective avenue to facilitate the whole of government and whole of society tobacco control. Thai health revenues is derived from the surcharge 2% of the excise tax on tobacco and alcohol products, which amounted to around $130 million in last few years. It is less than 2% of the national health expense or 0.1% of the government expense. This is why Thai health utilizes its limit funding in a different way to be a lubricant or the gap filling catalyst to drive forward the health promotion movement, including tobacco control. Next slide, please. The tri-power strategy on tobacco control engage multi-sectoral stakeholders. In the first angle, knowledge generation by collaborating with academic partners and set up the Tobacco Research and Knowledge Management Center, or TRC, as a knowledge node to develop knowledge and evidence for tobacco control policy and action in Thailand. Second angle is a social mobilization by supporting the action of civil society partners, communities, and the media to raise the people awareness on the adverse effect of tobacco and promote the tobacco-free cultures. Third, policy change and law enforcement by advocating to the policy bodies, notably the National Committee on Tobacco Control, the Ministry of Public Health, Ministry of Finance, and other policy bodies. Next slide, please. Let me now share some suggested solutions based on the Thailand experiences. First, to improve the priority of tobacco control, our experience points to the need to pursue the consistent advocacy on the following issue based on the convincing evidence. First one is that tobacco control is a high priority national agenda We have to move toward that. It is critical to pass and enforce effective law and policy in accordance with FCTC. Plus, the Tobacco Product Control Act in 2017 was approved by a wide margin. A sustainable funding for tobacco control is essential, resulting in the passage of Thai Health Promotion Act in 2001. Next slide, please. On resolving the silo effect within the various government departments and between the sectors, we may first develop a tobacco control plan and strategy that involve all key stakeholders. This will require them to engage constructively with each other toward a common goal. The example in Thailand is the National Plan or National Strategic Plan of Tobacco Control. Secondly, set up an effective coordinating mechanism to facilitate coordinate movement among stakeholders. Being autonomous and flexible are beneficial characteristics of this kind of unit, as it must bridge among diverse players from multiple sectors laterally, not vertically. This is another role that Thai Health plays. Third, enact an overarching governance body which has sufficient authority to demand coordinating action among its various constitutions. In Thailand, the sample is that the Thailand National Committee on Tobacco Control. Next slide, please. To improve societal awareness and participation, the launch of mass media campaign in the so-called air war or in the online, like a social media, in conjunction with the civil society and community action on the ground, or so-called ground war, are quite effective, raising the people's awareness on tobacco's harm and denormalization tobacco products. Over time, effective campaign can nudge or shift the societal climate toward a non-tobacco culture and leading to a more effective tobacco control laws. Next slide, please. On the challenge of the tobacco industry's influence, there are at least 3 suggested actions that keep an eye on them, monitor, surveillance, and expose their malpractice. Limit interaction and rejection partnership with the tobacco industry, including its nominees, such as the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World. Thirdly, stay prepared with up-to-date scientific and evidence in order to counter the industry opposition and argument when needed, such as the list of the e-cigarette for young people. Next slide, please. Lastly, I would like to end with this last slide on tobacco control movement and stakeholder in Thailand to reiterate again that we need all the hands on deck now and more than ever. As the COVID-19 and tobacco pandemic are similarly made it clear that no one is safe until everyone is safe. Our fate are in what to win. So let's do our best to work together to achieve tobacco endgame in our generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Supridas. We are very, very impressed by the excellent work and instrumental support that Thai Health provide, and also take lead to engage thousands. I cannot say thousand, but it's 20,000 partner organizations, both governments and non-government organizations, to enhance public health and tobacco control in Thailand. And you very clearly point out that tobacco industry is not a partner, or is not the partners of tobacco control movement. There is a lot of discussions on how tobacco control can be integrated into Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG. I'm pleased that today we will hear directly from an expert from UNDP, Mr. Dudley Taunton. He is the program specialist in UNDP global team. He focused on health partnerships and cover issues including non-communicable diseases, health governance, the economic determinants of health, and sustainable development agendas. He is now based at the UNDP Istanbul hub. So good morning to you, Dudley. He will share lessons on integrating tobacco control to development agenda. May Dudley to make this presentation.
Sure, thank you, Bongan, and good morning or good afternoon for you, colleagues. Thanks for inviting me to join you today. Let me get my presentation up for you. I'll be, let's see. Okay, should be up. Really good topic that we're covering today with the lessons from the integration of tobacco control into sustainable development. I used the opportunity to have a good, fun, open chat with my team to see, okay, what has everybody picked up? What are the main things that we take from experiences one country to the other ones we work in? A lot of these lessons are focused on tobacco control, but as a development agency, we try to keep a broad view. So everything we do, we try to find the linkages between one area and the other ones and try to find the spillover benefits. And I'll go through some of those pretty quickly now and then finish with the lessons that we came up with. So zooming out again to start, so not specifically about tobacco control, but looking just at sustainable development. Really, what we want to do is find levers that will push forward action and achievement on the three components, the three pillars, we call them, of sustainable development, which are the social one, the economic one, and the environmental one, which sometimes is shorthanded for the people, prosperity, and planet. So we want to, there's just such a huge agenda in front of us and so few resources that it's really important to find what we consider the sweet spot in the middle, where we can do one action and it moves and advances things on multiple levels. And again, ensuring policy coherence is really the key to it. We can't afford even 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So everything has to be lined up so that all the steps are forward. So this chart, I know it's difficult to read without the context here on the slide, but I can explain a little bit. It's from a paper we did jointly with the Convention Secretariat maybe 4 years ago that looks at what those spillovers are. And we took each Sustainable Development Goal target, all 169, with a group of experts, ranked them on a 6-point ordinal scale from indivisible, that you can't achieve X target without tobacco control, all the way down to incompatible, where they're really working against each other. And in the middle was neutral. And you can see really the spillovers are really significant. And we found, I think it's 99 of the targets you can have benefits, co-benefits, and synergies from by doing tobacco control, with only 2 of the targets even mildly constraining. Really, those aren't even constraining enough to worry too much about. So we can use this data to go to these other sectors and other development practitioners and say, look, if you do tobacco control, your sector, your interest, your goal will gain from these other spillovers. And this is part of the, you can hear it in the statement from Senator Cayetano and from Dr. Supreda just now. It's about how do we expand our influence beyond the tobacco control and even the health community and get these arguments acted on by other actors. So one way we do that is by really all of the work we're doing, and there's a lot of publications, and they're only so valuable. It's easy to just let them stack up in the corner of the room or in a file in an email, but we try to use them to get an audience with non-health policymakers. And so each of these are just a handful of ones we've done over the last few years. I think these are all with the Convention Secretariat. Targeted really, the first half of them or so are the investment cases that we've done for FCTC. We've done 24 of them now, and we have another 12 in progress this year. But really, these are targeted to ministries of finance, to ministries of commerce, ministries of labor, to parliamentarians, and really, it's trying to center tobacco control in a finance allocative decision setting. So this is what we're doing with those. Then we get into some we call Sdg Groups, where we go sustainable development goal by sustainable development goal in a country and look at exactly what the linkages are, what the spillovers are, and highlight them. And for these, it's okay for the people we're speaking to take it and flip it right to their interests. They don't need to read it from page 1 to page whatever. So we really try to focus it so anybody can use it. There are also at the bottom row some sectoral briefs where we go sector by sector. And then more guidance for different audiences. We have ministries of, the last one is for legal environment assessments. So really a range of ways to talk about tobacco control, but not to tobacco control or health people. And one thing we also try to do every chance we get is just use the numbers. The burden of tobacco use is staggering. We have strong, strong evidence that will make a difference. Most people know it, but just sometimes you just need to hit people over the head with huge numbers. And so just looking at the 24 countries where we've done these investment cases, we aggregate the total burden of tobacco use in these countries. It's already $24 billion US, which equates, and that's annually, and that equates to about 2.2% of GDP being lost on average every 12 months. And we also try to find arguments, really focus on things that people might not assume. And one thing people don't assume is that when you think about the cost of tobacco-related illnesses, you think about the healthcare costs. And our findings are that that's about 15% of the overall burden of tobacco, economic burden of tobacco use, with the other 85% being the economic productivity losses, which really centers the conversation on the finance ministries, labor especially, commerce, economy. So these are the numbers we try to use. And again, the incentive for acting now rather than waiting to scale up later is huge. So that just in those 24 countries, acting now, the estimates are 1.4 million deaths averted with $70 billion US and economic losses averted. Finally, one new thing we're doing now is, again, getting the conversation into other streams. And so a recent one that I was quite pleased with, because we weren't involved with whatsoever, was the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy and Finance of Cambodia did a development finance assessment, a sort of strategy paper with UNDP, and throughout the entire thing, tobacco taxes and the excise taxes from it cited as a really key way to finance development activities, to finance COVID response, sort of what was recommended when the SDGs were first launched and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda made the same recommendations. So UNDP is working with partners in many countries to do these development finance assessments, and this is something we're hoping to get into more and more of these. Meanwhile, that's the assessment part. The next step is the Integrated National Financing Framework. And this is a more joint UN effort with the finance ministries and governments. And here as well, we're seeing countries start to put tobacco control and the revenue implications of it into these financing frameworks. And especially even most recently, I think I got an email yesterday from Timor-Leste where this was the case. And another good example is in Sri Lanka, where tobacco control or tobacco tax revenue was mentioned as a prospect in the COVID-19 strategy. So really key areas here. So summing up, what are the lessons that my colleagues and I came up with the other day? First one, of course, get yourself outside the health sector. We can generally count on the support from everyone in the health sector. We know the position is where the champions are. But the success or failure will depend on our ability to sort of embed these ideas and actions in the other sectors. Second one, it's okay to appeal to other actors' selfish interests because of these legitimate spillover and co-benefits. You can say, just do tobacco control just to help yourself, because if you are a Ministry of Labor, we can see the impacts on your workforce. So find those arguments and target them to the interests of the other actors. Third, emphasize COVID-19. It sounds crass to say things like capitalize on it or take advantage, but really the COVID-19 pandemic has elevated tobacco control right to the center of an agenda that spans beyond just this narrow part of NCDs or health and looks at a lot of other issues. It's really been, it sounds really crass to say an opportunity, but there are a lot more opportunities for strengthening tobacco control now than there were 2 years ago. Fourth one, make sure to leverage those revenue implications. You can say it's important that people know that we hope to be reducing tobacco consumption, but there's still plenty of space for increasing tobacco tax revenue at the same time. So this is where we were looking at those development finance assessments and the integrated national financing frameworks. Third one is more for ourselves than for the other colleagues here, but it's important to always speak to people and not broadly sectors or anything. And this is especially true of UN papers. I mean, they tend to be quite technical, but this is important stuff. It affects people's lives, their families, and we can get a lot more traction if we speak to people and make the human element of it come forward. The other thing is that there's a role for everybody. Really, you've got strong civil society, engaged, connected. You've got plenty of academics who focus on this. So find those people who can help you push the agenda forward, build a coalition with them, and go together. Finally, the last one is, it seems obvious, the evidence is overwhelming, but it's difficult. That we're working against large interests. We're well outfunded. There are way more people working on these things than we do. It's really hard, so we have to work together. It's important to build coalitions, to use civil society, to use academia, to use the accountability found in the governments, and to use the UN where available for convening power. So these are where we are. It's a lot of work left to do, but I think we're on the right track in many of the countries we're working in, and we look forward to working with everyone here to keep it going, especially in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalik. The 6 lesson learned that you shared is very, very practical, and I believe that it can be applied to all the countries. I fully agree that the COVID pandemic is also a rationale to enhance and also to work more on tobacco control. We will very, very appreciate that. I think that this is great. It's perfect. And thank you to your colleagues as well. So let me now call on our next speakers, Attorney Debbie. She's the head of the Global Policy and Strategies at GGTC. She's the founding trustee and senior advisor at a think tank aimed at bridging the gap between health and law. She won the Bloomberg Award for Health Justice while she was the director. Debbie also provides legal assistance on universal health care, good governance, food and drug regulation, intellectual properties, taxation, trade, as well as women and child rights. Debbie, I believe that tobacco industries don't pay much attention to Ministry of Health, but instead they try to make friends with other ministries, in particular the trade and economic sectors. So what are the way forward and opportunities in engaging with these non-health sectors? Debbie, over to you.
Hi. Thank you for that, Bangwan. Let me share my screen. I'm having a bit of a problem. Please be patient with me. Can you see it now?
Yes, Debbie. But can you put on the slideshow mode?
Okay, so that's a problem. Hold on.
Possible, Debbie?
I'm getting there. Hold on.
Okay.
Is it working? Can you see it?
Yes, we see it, but not on the slideshow mode.
And let me do it again. Hold on. Okay, wrong screen. Share screen.
Okay, perfect now, Debbie.
Okay, is it moving?
Yes, yes, this is perfect, Debbie. Please proceed.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Debbie, and it's an honor to be among honorable guests in this session. I will discuss some opportunities and ways forward, as Bang-on suggested, in reaching out to the non-health sector. And this is how I'll do it. Early in my career, when I moved out from consumer products to banking, a friend gave me this book as a parting gift. And to honor my friend, I will use this as my theme. And don't worry, it's not 100, just 5 things to always remember and 1 thing to never forget. So first is that we must remember that many major victories have happened outside the health sector. So even if, for instance, the tobacco industry is gaslighting the public by saying that they deserve tax relief during the pandemic, there is a voice of reason in the non-health sector. In addition to the development financing sector that Dudley had already mentioned, the World Bank says taxes of unhealthy products, such as tobacco tax, should fund healthcare, especially in light of the pandemic. And that tobacco taxes are not regressive despite what the industry says. And we must also remember that this is an institution that has stood up against tobacco companies. Even the private finance sector has this about tobacco. Major global finance company estimated that tobacco industry creates 5 times more societal costs than benefits. Currently, investors are shifting to sustainable investments, and fund managers representing 11 trillion worth of assets have gone tobacco-free. And that's about 10% of global assets involved. We also have victories in the environment sector. Environment ministers, such as those in UK, France, and the rest of the EU, have started using polluters pay principle to make tobacco companies pay for environmental harms. Other victories would include the WTO, or World Trade Organization, upholding health over trade, and large economies in the Latin America and Asia Pacific agreeing to remove the tobacco industry from the benefit of investor state remedies. And the Ombudsman and in the EU, a champion of good governance, have called out the EU Commission for not being transparent in its dealings with the tobacco industry, and considers the failure to apply transparency rules maladministration. The Civil Service Commission in the Philippines supported the Department of Health in its fight against the tobacco industry through a policy to protect the whole bureaucracy against the tobacco industry interference. And then in the field of labor, labor officials have agreed that the ILO should end its sponsorship contract with tobacco. These victories were gained because of the global support of the tobacco control community. And this reminds us to take part in global responses that denormalize the tobacco industry. 2 years ago, when an outgoing UN official opened up the idea of partnering with the tobacco industry, civil society came together to raise this concern. Ultimately, the UN Secretary General reminded all UN offices to adhere to the model policy to prevent tobacco industry interference. The rest of the UN agencies and the UNDP is a great example of this. They're all bound to consider the model policy, not just because of the ECOSOC resolution that prescribed it, but also because according to its charter, the UN should be promoting respect for human rights. And human rights experts have already declared that the tobacco industry violates human rights. Third, know that your actions at the local level can have greater impact than you think. We know this is true in countries that have fought big tobacco over plain packaging, but it is also true for many other initiatives. My screen froze. Can you still see anything?
Yes, it's now the slide on the future of Asia, Debbie.
Okay, thank you. So, well, just a few months ago, star-studded Asian conference was advertised along with Philip Morris sponsorship. And the heads of states across Asia Pacific are shown alongside the tobacco CEO. Stop, a global tobacco watchdog, flagged the issue to the advocates concerned. And the first responders took swift action to get their heads of states to withdraw from the conference. Other advocates followed suit, and it became so hard for the conference organizers to confirm speakers that they had to pull out the tobacco sponsorship. Ultimately, many global leaders from our region participated, but they were spared from tobacco branding and engagement. Another thing we must remember is to let the non-health sector know that we are watching. Just a month ago, Bangladesh issued guidelines to disqualify the tobacco industry from receiving a presidential award. And this would not have happened had it not been for the effort of local advocates to monitor an award given to BAT and collectively denounce it in media. Lastly, a quote: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." From 2009 to 2010, I invested my time in regularly meeting a handful of highly respected senior government officials known for their integrity. We met until we are all on the same page about two things: going 100% smoke-free and countering tobacco industry interference. Then we consulted other government agencies and finally adopted a 100% smoke-free policy and a joint circular to protect it against tobacco industry interference. Health Justice sustained this outreach to the non-health sector, along with partners like APACT. And over the past 10 years, various agencies and units released a total of about 80 issuances that are aligned with Article 5.3. This covers around 25 national government agencies ranging from social welfare and culture to revenue and customs. Health Justice, with support of its partners, including GGTC on behalf of STOP, continues to share information and tools to build on the policy, and these are used to respond to concerns such as the intensified donations during the pandemic, and this was the issuance that reiterates the Article 5.3 policy. Recently, the Education Ministry issued a strong policy to cover long-standing loopholes that allow tobacco companies to advertise while recruiting in universities, a matter that the NGOs had reported to them. Their support has never been more timely as we face the challenge of tobacco front groups approaching researchers to promote their novel and emerging addictive and deadly products. And finally, the one thing to never forget, when we reach out to the non-health sector, I think the biggest challenge that you will face will be tobacco industry interference. And it is important to remember that you are not alone, and that you will be standing in the shoulders of giants, including several of those who are participating here in APACT. Furthermore, resources to fight tobacco industry interference has become increasingly available. GGTC, which is a joint initiative of Thammasat University and SIATCA, works to support those who are countering tobacco industry interference. In 2017, it was designated as the Convention Secretariat's Knowledge Hub for Article 5.3, and in 2019, Bloomberg awarded it along with PATH, Union, and Vital Strategies to be a partner of STOP, tobacco industry watchdog. With support of its partners, GGTC provides technical assistance for those fighting the tobacco industry and related parties furthering its interests. So if you're fighting big tobacco, get in touch with us and we will be happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie, for sharing a lot of victories. And I think that we are hopeful that actually we can reach out to non-health sectors as well as other sectors, both nationally and globally. We have to wrap up the session soon because we have allocated limited time for this session. At first, I plan to call all speakers to give the one take-home message, but I don't think that we have time right now. So I would like to echo, which is a key message from all speakers. There are a lot of key messages during this plenary, but I have my own 3 favorite key messages that I would like to share to you as a wrap-up. So the first one is tobacco control needs whole of government approach and whole society approach. It is very clear from Thai Health experience, from Senator Cayetano's experience, as well as what Dudley has mentioned from the UNDP experience. And also, the tobacco control should be part of SDG, of Sustainable Goals. I'm very, very pleased that we hear from Dudley today and already demonstrate that this is possible, and it's happened in many, many countries under the 2020 project that UNDP worked closely with WHO and Convention Secretariat and many governments. And last but not least, which is very important and also mentioned by all the speakers, is that tobacco industry is not a partner to tobacco control. We need to be vigilant, and we need to have a firewall to prevent tobacco industry from interfering any policy measures in tobacco control. So I hope that this is very helpful. Once again, on behalf of TTTC and on behalf of the APACT organizer, I would like to thank all speakers for a very provoking thought and also the wonderful insight that you share with us today. I believe that this will be very, very helpful. And I also would like to appreciate Senator Cayetano for her contributions to these sessions as well. So that is the end of this session. I hope that you will get some take-home message with you, and then are able to work hand in hand with the non-health sectors and also whole society to enhance tobacco control in your countries. With that, thank you very much to our speakers. I hope that you will enjoy the rest of the APAC conference this afternoon. Please don't miss the decoration session and the close section happening later this